Here we are back with part 2 of Mesopotamia and Persia. We left off talking about cylinder seals and how these were about 1.5 inches long, half an inch wide, made from stone or some other type of material, maybe diorite for instance. And an inscription was carved onto it, kind of telling a narrative or a story. It would then be rolled through wet or moist clay, and you would have this really great scene. And you know, when I worked at the LA County Museum of Art, we had a whole tray of these, and they were just amazing to look at. And you can definitely see the different really cool scenes that these created. Now we'll go on to the Akkadian Empire. And this is a really important work, head of an Akkadian ruler. And we can note that he's a ruler because of the way his hair is braided, both in the back of his head, which we'll see in a different image, but also with the beard. It was found in the city of Nineveh, and most likely this was destroyed in the sack of Nineveh around 612 AD. It is surprising that we have this, because most sculptures that were made in bronze or other forms of precious metal were melted down and reused. All that remains from this full body sculpture is the head, so most likely the rest of the body was probably destroyed and melted. It's exciting because this is now made with the lost wax casting method, and that is the method that we see used right around 2500 BC for the first time. One of the original casting areas was actually in Nigeria. And what happens with the lost wax casting method, and this is what you need to know for an exam or a quiz, is that it creates a hollow sculpture. And this is the way we still cast hollow sculptures today. By creating something that's hollow, we're using less material. Material like bronze is extremely expensive, and so we're using less material, therefore less money, and it's lighter in weight as well. So there's a lot of advantages using this process. This is kind of what the process goes with. There's actually 9 different steps. This is a person performing traditional lost wax casting. But it is a fairly complex process. But again, all you have to know about really is the result, which is creating a hollow sculpture. We're going to look at a couple steles or steles as they're called in this chapter, and they're basically a large upright stone with a carving on the front of it. This is again relief carving or relief sculpture, and this one is fairly large, 6 feet tall, 6 inches, and it's made from a pinkish sandstone. Naram-Sin is the Akkadian king who defeats the people of the Zagros Mountains, which we find in southern Iran. And you can see him at the very top, leading his troops up the mountains. And here we have an enemy with a spear run through its neck. We have another enemy praying, asking the gods to facilitate an escape or at least mercy from the king. Up above that, we also have a couple gods who are overseeing this event. The gods are Ishtar and Shamash, the gods of fertility and justice. And what's great about this work is that this is the first time we have an artwork commemorating a military victory. Now, also take a look at how large Naram-Sin is in regards to scale of the other individuals seen. He's tremendously larger, 2 to 3 times as large. And this is called hieratic scale, hierarchical scale, hieratic proportion. It goes by a number of different synonyms, but the definition is the same. It's the idea that the largest person in the artwork is the most important. We start to see it with this work here. It will also continue on through our chapter on Egyptian art, and even in the chapter, the very last chapter in the book, regarding the Italian Renaissance. We see supersized versions of St. Francis or the Madonna, and the idea is that that person is the most important. We're supposed to be concentrating on that person. The GUDEA of LAGASH, there is actually many sculptures of this. Something I'll draw your attention to right away is the cuneiform writing that is seen. It's kind of like hieroglyphics on the front of both of these sculptures. And they're actually fairly small sculptures, even though this is GUDEA, who is the leader one of the leaders of a city-state within the Akkadian Empire. And it doesn't really necessarily look like this guy is a ruler, but he is. And then we start to have thoughts about, well, what is a ruler supposed to look like? And what can we take away from this sculpture? What adjectives might we use to describe it? Is he a strong individual, someone peaceful or pious? The sculpture at the right is fairly small, 29 inches tall. And one of the reasons it's so compact is the material it's made from. It's made from diorite, which is a very difficult stone to carve. It's not even a stone that's native to the area. It was imported most likely from Egypt, but we also see parts of it emerging in Germany, Italy, and Romania. It has a really nice glossy finish that never really decays, and this work is going to last forever, really. When you look at it, especially the work at the right, you know, this is a work that's 4,000 years old, and it looks fairly new. The vessel that the figure holds at the right, you can kind of see water flowing out of it, and in the two streams, both have fish within it. So again, it's a very cool sculpture, and we'll take a look at that too in comparison for some of the Egyptian rulers in the next chapter. As we move into the Babylonian Empire, one of the most important works of art we're going to discuss in this chapter is the Stele of Hammurabi. It's a little bit taller than the one of Naram-Sin. It's another 6 inches taller, so 7 feet. And again, it's not only an icon of Mesopotamian art, but ancient art in general, as it records the decisions and decrees that were made by Hammurabi during his reign. And this code serves as law in Mesopotamia for the next 1,000 years. And part of your quiz this week is based on this. So I'm not going to tell you too much about it, but it's definitely a very cool work. You can see the king is acting as intermediary between the god Shamash at the right and the people who he serves. The cuneiform writing below shows that 300 entries have been decoded, and the punishments depended on gender and social standing. One of the punishments, of course, being the most famous, is an eye for an eye. But of the 300 entries that have been decoded, 68 deal with domestic problems, 20 physical assaults. In the Assyrian Empire, we'll take a look briefly at ASHURBANIPAL hunting lions. This is again relief sculpture that is seen actually on the surrounding walls of the city, which happen to be 120 feet thick and 42 feet high. And these reliefs were made from alabaster. It shows the king in a lion hunt, although it doesn't show that this is a very controlled environment. Only one lion was let out at a time. He had people around him protecting him as well, just in case the lion got too close. So not very sportsmanlike, but again, kind of a propaganda image showing how strong the ruler of the area is. Another relief shows him relaxing with his wife next to him at his left. And I wanted to get to these in this video. This is the Lamassu, which are human-headed winged lions. And most of these, fortunately, today are in museums. And these came from the Assyrian palace of Sargon II, dating around 859 BC. And you can see how gigantic they are. They're 14 feet high. So if you walked into the king's palace and you looked at these, you know, that definitely has a statement about the powerfulness of the king and of the civilization. There is a certain confidence that they have. And again, this is political art or propaganda. The idea of these were to impress and intimidate others. The bearded head of a man, the body of a lion or bull, and the wings of an eagle. And we also have the horned headdress of a god, which each of them are wearing. And they're meant to be viewed from both the front and the side. That's why you can see that they have 5 legs, which is a little bit odd. There are 3 locations in the world where these still stand in their original locations. However, with all the unrest in the Middle East and the destruction of artworks, this one in the city of Nineveh, this one no longer stands. And so we're even questioning how many of the others are still standing. There's also the Ishtar Gate in this chapter, which you should read through. And I want to spend the last minute or so talking about Persepolis, which is the capital of the ancient Persian Empire. And this was a sprawling ceremonial and administrative complex of palatial dwellings, government buildings, grand staircases, and columned hallways. This is our most important source of knowledge about Persian art and architecture, and it's situated on a high plateau which was heavily fortified. It was Alexander the Great and his army who leveled this site in a gesture of destroying Persian imperial power. But even the ruins of this site are tremendously impressive. And there's also a tremendous amount of relief sculpture on the sides of the walls, as you can see there, kind of off to the left of the grand staircase. The processional frieze of the royal audience hall, which you can kind of see above the stairs there, was 60 feet high and 217 feet in length. 36 columns holding an audience of thousands in attendance. The stairs were built so that horses could ride up into the location. And with that, that's going to draw this video to a close. Next week, we're going to be talking about the Egyptian civilizations, and we'll see you next week.